But Alibuyers, I wanted to hop on and just do an episode for Grammy because Grammy loved this podcast. She was so proud of what I've built here, this community. All of your well wishes were read to her, and it just blew her away that so many people from all over the world took a moment to think about her, pray for her. And I've shared Grammy with you guys probably since the first week of this podcast, and it's been a minute. So a lot of you felt like you knew her, and that's just how Grammy was. You met her once in person and you felt like you've known her forever. And I guess even from afar, it was the same because she was definitely one of a kind. The last update I posted to YouTube was somewhat hopeful, but before we get there, we'll talk about what happened that led us to Grammy leaving this world at 5:36 a.m. on Friday with her head on my heart. She had been in the hospital a few weeks ago for C. diff, which is hard for elderly. It's something that's common, but in true Grammy fashion, she beat it. And we decided to send her to a 10-day inpatient rehab to try to get some strength back, do some occupational therapy so that she would feel more comfortable doing certain things for herself safely. And she really enjoyed her time over there at Encompass Health. It's a beautiful facility. They took amazing care of her. She loved the food. Her appetite had been really diminishing in the last few weeks. And then she got her appetite back, and every meal she would rave about. And she was doing great, y'all. I had to go Halloween to do 2 hours with her so that they could show me how I could help her once she came back home. She was walking so fast. She had energy. Really, it was the best we had seen her in a year. And so there was a lot of hope that this was the turning point for her, that she would get better and we would be able to enjoy the holidays and maybe we're going to get a break. So she came home last Sunday, a week this past Sunday. She had on her little graduation t-shirt from the rehab place. And I'd never seen Grammy in a t-shirt, by the way. So it was really weird for me. But she was proud of it because she worked very hard to get that strength back and to get some independence. And she was very proud of herself. And the next morning, since her appetite had improved, she wanted a gravy biscuit. So got that ready for her. And I was walking her to the kitchen table and she stopped just in her tracks. And that was happening back when her AFib was acting up. She would get dizzy sometimes. So I asked her, "Are you dizzy?" And she just didn't talk for a second. And then she tried to take a step and started going to the right. And I'm always 2 steps behind her because I'm nervous and I just don't want a fall to be anything that would set us back in a big way. So I was able to grab her, ease her down to the ground. And looking back, it was very clear to me that her femur was broken. But at the time, I think my adrenaline was just take care of her. I pulled her and got her on the couch. My son, who's a firefighter EMT, came in. I'd already called 911, took a look at her, and he said, "Yeah, I'm glad you called. Something's going on with this leg big time." So they confirmed she had broken her femur, which was a devastating diagnosis for us because of how good she was walking and how good she was doing. And we knew this was going to be a huge setback. So the next day on Tuesday, they put a rod in. The surgery went as well as it could. Perfect, really, given the fact that she was 91 and her pain level was 0, which is amazing. She had had some chronic pain in her leg that now we think was attributed to this fracture. They didn't know if maybe chronic use of steroids over the years for her arthritis was the culprit. It can weaken your bones, and she had osteoarthritis, kind of a perfect storm. Or did she have a fracture that was there that over time, kind of like a windshield, when it cracks, it's small at first, but over time it gets bigger. She had no post-op pain, but we were dealing with some really bad nausea and vomiting the first 2 days after surgery that we attributed to anesthesia, no food, still putting her on narcotics because we didn't want to have to catch up with bad pain if it came along. And so finally by Thursday evening, she was just nauseous, but not getting sick. So I ran to the store and I thought, what would be bland that I could give her that would get some food on her stomach, but not be harsh on her stomach? So I got baby food. I got peaches because she loves peaches. And every 30 minutes Thursday night, I was giving her a spoonful of peaches and a little bit to drink just to sort of ease her stomach back into having food so that maybe she would feel better and be able to get up for therapy and just try to give her some fuel. Friday morning, the doctor was in taking a look at her, and we realized her hemoglobin was really, really low. And so they ordered some blood and they were giving her a transfusion, and her blood pressure just bottomed out, which is kind of odd happening during the transfusion. She had never had a reaction to that, but the doctor was in there for it. And so they opened up the flow on the blood and the fluids and put her head down, and her blood pressure came up, and they were asking her where she was. Prisma, why are you here? Well, I broke my leg. So we were like, okay, she's with it. And then she got much better. So we thought maybe it was a fluke, but the doctor said, let me just do a CT of her belly just to make sure we're not bleeding out anywhere, because during the drop, the orthopedic surgeon came in and unwrapped her leg and said, her leg looks great, actually better than I thought. This is not the problem. The doctor decided to move her to the step down ICU unit so that they could monitor her vitals for 24 hours to make sure we weren't dipping again. By the time we got her settled in there, she was back to her chatty self, normal Grammy. Grammy loved to talk, y'all. Sometimes I would have to tell her, let me talk to the doctor, because Grammy would give a whole life history to where the doctors obviously wanted to know things that were relevant in the moment. And these two surgeons came in and said, we did the CT, and she essentially had some dead gut. That was a devastating diagnosis. And they told us there were two options. They could go in, and it would be a full length incision down the length of her belly. They would take out the dead gut. They would leave that incision open for an undetermined amount of time and maybe have to go back in and take out more dead gut. And he told of all the other things they would have to do in order to try and remedy this. And my mom and I looked at each other and we didn't have to say a word, because Grammy's daughter, my Aunt Angie, who you guys know I lost almost 4 years ago, had the same thing. And she was 54 and she never got better. She was constantly septic. They would get her down to a safer level, send her home, and then she'd be right back in the hospital. And Grammy lost her youngest daughter at 54 on Mother's Day, coming up 4 years. So we never wanted that for Grammy. And I don't think Grammy really comprehended what the doctor was saying. Her hearing has gone a bit in the last 6 months. And she said, well, I'll think about it and tell you tomorrow. But the doctors told us the other option is that we would keep her comfortable. It would be a relatively quick passing. And so that was the biggest gut punch to us. Later on, I posted on my socials about Grammy because we needed prayers. It was devastating. I came home, just felt like I couldn't breathe, could feel my heart breaking, and my kids went up to see her. And even though I don't think her brain knew she was dying, her soul did, because she was giving my kids advice for their futures. But in the meantime, the last YouTube update I posted, her numbers were moving back in the right direction, where she didn't look septic and her hemoglobin was coming up to normal levels. And that gave us a lot of hope that maybe this diagnosis was wrong, because the doctor did say I could go in there, find you have no dead gut, and I would close you back up and you would have an incision. So we were hoping that was the case, because her numbers were just improving by the hour. And the medical staff was really shocked at how these numbers very quickly went back to normal. So we had hope. Okay, we're just going to be dealing with this leg. So my mom and I were there standing by her bed after everybody had left. I was coming up to relieve my mom to take the night shift. I wanted to stay up and watch her blood pressure all night, make sure we were good. And Grammy looked at us and she said, y'all are sparkling. And so me and mom immediately looked down on our clothes to see if we have glitter on us or something. Did we hug somebody that had glitter? We just didn't know, but we had nothing on us. And it wasn't until after she passed that we thought my Aunt Angie and my pop, her husband, standing right there with us. We were guarding her in life and they were there to take her home. That's something that's been very comforting to me in the days since she passed. But that night, Grammy was back to normal. She loved to make the nurses laugh. She loved to make it fun for them. She knew, she would always say, I bet they get some patients that aren't easy to work with, and I'm not going to be one of those. So even when she wasn't feeling good, she would always try to make it pleasant for the nurses that were in her room. Her hands and her feet were just so cold that night, and they were trying to get blood out of her finger at that point to measure these levels that we were monitoring. And it took a while. So 20 minutes, Grammy had them in stitches, and me and Grammy go back and forth and make people laugh. That's just how we roll. After they left the room, this was about 5:20. in the morning on Friday, Grammy said, "Why don't we get a little sleep? I want to wake up and call Sarah Rose, which is my daughter, at 7 to wake her up for school." Because one time, y'all, one time this year, we both slept through our alarms and she was 15 minutes late. And every day since then, Grammy called the both of us. "Are you awake? Are you up? Are you getting ready?" And I said, "Okay." And she said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too, Grammy." And as soon as I said, "I love you too, Grammy," I heard her trying to cough and I could hear something in her throat. And I said, "Hey, Grammy, just give it a good cough." And then that sound got louder and louder, and I knew something was happening. And so it was dark in there because I had just turned the light off. I just saw something coming out of her nose and her mouth. And so I immediately hit the nurse button. I hit the light and I grabbed a washcloth that was right beside her bed and wiped her face. And she locked eyes with me. I pulled her up with both hands to an upright position to where we were face to face to make sure nothing was aspirated until the nurse got in there. It was 10 seconds, but it felt like a year. And she locked eyes with me. And I have to say, y'all, it's like she stared through my soul. It was not a panic look. It was a very peaceful, serene look. And the weight of her body just came forward. And I glanced up at her heart monitor and it went from 80 to 0. And the minute that her forehead literally landed on top of my heart, her heart stopped. And what I felt after that is something I will remember until I take my last breath on this earth. I felt like her soul passed right through me. And it was this intense feeling of comfort and warmth, almost like an internal hug. And it stayed with me for a while. So they bring in the critical care team, and her nurses are very upset as they're trying to work on her. And they start CPR. And I saw them doing it, and it was so violent. And it's the way you do it. But here's my little grandma, 91, tiny little thing. I just yelled, "Stop. She's gone. Let her go." And they were looking at me and still going. And they said they got a little pulse back. I looked, it was about 46. At that point, they sent me out into the hallway. So I called my mom and I said, "Mom, she's gone. Can we stop CPR? They're doing CPR." She said, "Stop." So I ran in the room and I said, "Stop." They were about to shock her. I said, "This is how she wanted to go." I remember one time laying in the bed with her and she asked me, "Are you afraid of dying?" And I said, "No, not at all. It's part of life. It's the only guarantee besides the day we're born." And I said, "Are you?" And she said, "No, I just don't want to suffer. I don't want to lay there and suffer." And so from the time I told her, "I love you too, Grammy," to the time her head hit my chest, I would estimate maybe 10 seconds. And she really didn't know what hit her. The nurses later confirmed that the minute she locked eyes with me and that heart stopped, it was over and she didn't suffer. So it was the easiest thing for me to do to tell them to stop. I said, "I'm her power of attorney, no resuscitation." I knew she had aspirated stuff. It was just going to be inevitable and she was gone. So they cleaned her up and I went in there and I sat down by her and grabbed her hand and it was warm. That night it was so cold, but that little hand with her arthritis and her huge knuckles put her hand in mine and it was warm. And I looked at her face and she had a little smile on her face, y'all. And she had a little tear just hanging in the very corner of her eye. And I thought, that tear is for leaving us. But that smile is because she saw her daughter. And not too long ago, we were talking about dying and what we hope to see when we cross. And I said, "Okay, besides Angie, who's the one person you're looking forward to seeing?" And she said, "Angie." She said, "I love your pop, my parents, my grandmother, who she loved very dearly." But she said, "My baby." So I felt this sense of comfort looking at this little smile on her face and this little tear that I wiped away that I think was for us. And I thought, the minute her head hit my chest, she saw her daughter. And I talked to her and I thanked her for who she was to me in my life, which was a very central figure from the day I was born. She's not only been a grandmother, but in the year that she lived with me and I took care of her, our relationship grew to something past the grandmother granddaughter relationship. It matured It was more of a woman to woman with still that grandmother granddaughter relationship, but we had a lot of talks over this year about life, her giving me advice that at the time I thought was just random ramblings from her, but really were things she wanted me to know, the things she didn't get to do, the way she didn't handle situations. It was things I think in retrospect of her own life, she would hope sharing a little wisdom with me might save me from taking a detour of how I should do things or whatever. I'm just still sort of thinking back to all these conversations we had and the lessons that were embedded in those that didn't seem significant at the time, but do now. When I talk about her loving this podcast, y'all, she loved this podcast. I mean, 15 minutes before she died, she was so proud to tell everybody what I did. And she was trying to get me new listeners with the Lab Girls. Do you like true crime? Yeah. She has a podcast. I cannot tell you how many times she has told people what I do and said, go subscribe. And some of you may be listening to this because of her. I left the hospital feeling really weird, packing up the room, getting my stuff, getting her stuff that we had brought for her. And it was just a shock. I had not comprehended what had just happened, although in the moment I was stronger than I ever thought I could be. And I went to my mom's and my dad's, who lived 2 doors up from me, and we had a moment, and all of our family lives on the same street. And so we went and told my brother and his wife, and then we came home and told the kids. And so it's just been a very devastating time for us. My kids lived a year of their life in the same house with their 91-year-old grandmother and had fun with her. They have videos I haven't even seen where they would play around with her and get her laughing. And, even if it was just popping in to give her a kiss or hopping in the bed with her and watching funny videos or TikTok. She loved funny videos, y'all. Her talking to them about their futures. It's added so much to their life for the rest of their life to have this intimate time with her here in our home that I'm so grateful for. And it makes that loss even harder, but that's the price of love. The price of loving someone so much is that when they go, the devastation is amplified and it reaches the very back corners of your heart and your soul. And for me, I've been so hardwired to think of her first all day, every day. How is her sugar? Do you need to get up? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Or just randomly hopping in bed with her with my laptop to do my work or just to lay and watch TV, which that woman watched News Nation from the time she got up in the morning until she fell asleep at night. She loved keeping up with the news and had gotten into true crime since she had been with me. And sometimes the most profound moments we had, I think, were just laying in silence, and I'd be in my own world, she'd be in her own world, but we were together. After Hurricane Helene hit, she stayed with me for 2 months because she didn't have power at her house. And she really got used to being here. The noise, the people in and out, the family popping in because we all live on the same street. So it was really easy to just pop over and say hi. And my kids and their friends that she loved like her own grandkids, some of which she saw grow up, the pets that she grew to love. It was a full house, but it was full of love. And while her goal that she spoke out loud was to go back home and be independent, in the last few weeks, she talked about selling her house and how it would be so lonely to go back there and it's just quiet. To where in my house, there's always a phone ringing. There's always a pet coming up to see her. There's always somebody in her room hanging out with her. And I think she realized that the home that she lived in was just a structure. And it was really the people in it that made it what it was. And after my aunt died, she really lost that emotional connection to her house that she had lived in since 1960. Because she would look for my aunt every day at 5 when she would get off work, and she would stop by because it was on her way home, and they would have dinner. And a lot of times we would all go over there and sit and have dinner and just catch up about our day. And when she lived on her own, her house was less than 5 minutes away. So it was multiple times a week. We would all kind of just hang out over there and just sit around the table and laugh and eat and give her some company. But when she came to live with me, there were two things that I wanted for her. Number one, I wanted this to feel like her home. So I fixed up the bedroom to a Grammy bedroom. And just last week, Grammy was talking about going back to rehab. And she said, well, when I go home, I'm going to do this and this and this. And my mom said, yeah, Mom, you're not going to be able to go home immediately. And Grammy said, no, home at Gigi's. And that means so much to me now because in the end, this was her home. The other thing that I wanted to do was to make sure she never lost her dignity in me having to care for her, because that was something that was very important to her. She was the kind of woman that always had to be dressed nicely. Even on her worst days going to the doctor, she would get up and it would take 3-4 hours for her to get a shower and to get ready to go, and it would wear her out. But she had to present herself as very well put together and just always a lady. And it's interesting because the night she passed, we were talking, and like I say, she was normal. She was as normal as she could have been given the day she had. And the night she died, she thanked me for allowing her to keep her dignity in the things I would have to do to take care of her sometimes when she was sick. So I always made sure in the times that we were doing things that very well could have made her lose her dignity, we laughed and deflected that feeling into something fun. So to hear those two things from her in the last week of her life meant so much to me because that's all I wanted. She may be 91. She may need help, but in her heart and her mind, which was intact until she took her last breath, she kept that dignity, and that's what I wanted for her. And I've done a lot of inventory since Friday morning about who she was to me from the time I was little, and she was just this light in my life. Grandparents are so special, and if you had good ones, you know what I'm talking about. Being in her presence was comforting in itself. It didn't matter what kind of day I had. If I walked into her house when she was living at home, I immediately felt like whatever was bothering me was left at the door. She was just a happy place for me. Every milestone in my life she celebrated with me, pure joy. Her family meant everything to her. And we had 5 generations on one street till she died. And she was so proud of that. But her family was her rock. And she was the backbone of this family. I think that is why she fought so hard all year, because she would say, I have to live. I have to keep you guys straight. And that was just her. But I was looking at these old pictures of her. I'm going through and I'm doing the slideshow for her viewing, which we haven't been able to schedule yet. We're trying to get insurance to pay out, and that's a pain. But looking at these pictures of her before she was Grammy, she was Sarah Francis, this young woman full of hope and dreams and vibrant and gorgeous. And I thought to myself, how sad I didn't get to know that version of her, because I think we would have been best friends in that time too. One story that really stands out to me, that's a big clue of who she was before she was a wife and a mother and a grandmother, is as a girl, they lived right beside this big field, and there was a bull in the field. And Grammy said she would get her red dress on and she would go open the gate and stand right by it. And she said I would sway left and right, move my dress. And when the bull would come, she would get out of the gate. It was always such a funny story that she told. But just this little daredevil that had no fear, that really was who she ended up being later in life. I just love that story. She's an old Southern woman raised in the South, but she was hip, y'all. She loved her Facebook. She loved Instagram. She loved Facebook Reels and funny videos on YouTube. And she loved watching her shows on News Nation. And then sometimes she would watch 90 Day Fiancé and root for certain couples. And she loved Jail from Long Crime. And in fact, learned how to rap the entire theme song after about a week of watching it on repeat. But there was still this little old lady in there that could make the meanest chicken and dumplings that you've ever had. The day she died, I thought to myself, it was such a random thought. I'll never taste those again. I'll never taste her chicken and dumplings again that she would work on for 8 hours. But it was always the comfort food in my life. Now, we do have her on video making them, but you guys know how it is. Decades and decades of perfecting everything. We'll never get it just right, or her banana pudding. So I was thinking about stupid things like that. And I thought it wasn't stupid to say I'm going to miss that. It was really the love that was put into making that to make her family happy. But as the days have worn on and the shocks worn off, I look back at that night and I see all these little things that maybe her mind didn't realize she was dying. We didn't think she was dying at that point, but her soul knew, I think, because I think when you are a caregiver for somebody 24/7, the bond you have is just intensified and deepened because you're with them in their most vulnerable moments. And there were times I was sick and I didn't feel good, but my care for her didn't change because she deserved that for all the years that she was there for me, maybe when she didn't feel like it. To be a caregiver for somebody 24/7 for really a year, for me, every thought in my day was her first. Does she need something to bring her sugar up? Does she need help getting up? Is she comfortable? I mean, she was mobile, but I wanted to make sure she was good, absolutely comfortable, not wanting for anything. And so far, the hard thing for me has been walking in her room and her not there. It's so quiet in this house, mainly because she would jack the volume to like 90 because she couldn't hear. But it's so quiet in here. And if I was in here working, she would call my phone and say, "Hey, I need your help," or "Can you bring me this?" And my phone's not ringing as much. I've got to learn to do life without her in it. And she has been the center of my life for a year. And I think that that rewiring is going to take a long time. There are times where I feel like the tears won't stop and that the pain is just a physical ache. I just feel like she's been ripped away from me and I feel empty and lost. But at the same time, I feel her with me. All I can hear in my ear is "I'm okay." And that's something she would say, even if she was sick or not feeling good. "I'm okay. I'm okay." And I've heard that over and over and over in my ear since she passed. And I think maybe that's her telling me that I made the right decision to stop the CPR. And I don't regret it. I'm not sitting here thinking, should I have or should I let them go? No, I feel like whatever happened between the two of us when her head hit my heart and she went, she left something in me. And I don't know what it is yet, but I feel it. And I can't explain it. And you guys may think I'm crazy, but that experience for me is something I know I will never feel again on this earth. It was so powerful. And if I have to say, other than the birth of my kids, when they put my babies in my arms, I've never felt something more life changing or powerful as I did the minute her heart stopped. And I'm really glad she felt comfortable enough to go with me because I don't think my mom could have handled what was happening to her body at the time she passed. I'm really trying to think about that look in my eye, that gaze of peace and comfort until her heart stopped, and not what I saw because she wasn't there for that. She lost consciousness so quickly. So I'm trying to put that out of my head, but it is a little traumatizing at this point. Can still feel the weight of her forehead on my heart the minute her heart stopped. But my gosh, for her to go literally on my chest, it was something that was so special to me because she felt safe enough. I had cared for her for a year, and she knew in a lot of ways I could handle it. We were talking not too long ago about dreams she had when she was young and she dropped out of school her senior year. And that was always a big regret for her. And in fact, one of the last things she told Sarah Rose was keep your grades up, do good in school, get an education. At 14, she worked at a grocery store called Cash and Carry in the produce department. And she used to talk about how cold her hands would be, but she still has that first pay stub that she got at 14 in her house. And I'm going to find an age appropriate picture of her and put that pay stub in there and put that at my studio. And my daughter Taylor, who looks so much like her as a young woman, asked her, "Hey, if there was ever anywhere you wanted to go in the world, where would it have been?" And she said Paris. And that kind of shocked me because she never told me that. This was a few weeks ago. And I wish I'd asked her why, but I didn't. But I definitely am going to go to Paris. You know, and her name lives on in Sarah Rose and Taylor. Her name was Sarah Taylor. Named my girls after her and my pop. And I think the beautiful part of it for me is even though she's gone, she's really not, because her DNA is etched in every fiber of my being. In a lot of ways, I am Sarah Frances Taylor too, and her legacy lives on through all of us. It's going to take me a very long time to get over this. You could say she was 91. I mean, she had a long life. That's awesome. But who she was to me, she could have lived to be 101 and it would have been too soon for her to leave me and all of us. But it was just her time. And I've accepted that. But I'm very broken right now. And I feel very empty and lost. And I know it's going to take a very long time for me to rewire myself to a life without her. She never wanted to be a burden. And she would say that often. I've ruined your life. I don't want to be a burden. I said, Grammy, you've added so much to my life being here 24/7 with me. The lessons she didn't know she was teaching me, the little words of advice that were fleeting at the time, but profound now. I wouldn't have had that had she not been here. And I'm so grateful, even though it was a tough year. I'm so grateful for this year, y'all. I will miss her until I take my last breath. My mom and my Grammy have always been my guiding force of who I want to be as a woman, as a mother, and as a grandmother eventually. She told me not too long ago, just wait till you hold that first grandbaby. It is a love you've never felt. You can't comprehend it until it happens. And although I'm very happy to wait for that, I guess when I hold my first grandbaby, my first thought's going to be of her. There's so much beauty in death, the grand finale of a life well lived, full of love, laughter, and just family. And I have no doubt she left this earth feeling so loved. And when she left this earth, we all felt we were so loved because she constantly poured love into us, even in the times where she could barely lift her head. She was our first thought and we were hers. And that's really what life's about, are those connections. And I know some people don't have families that are close like mine is, and that breaks my heart. But those connections you have with the people that know you best, that knew you from the time you were born. And to think her last words on this earth were to me, I love you. I'll hear those words every day. I will feel the weight of her on me every day. As she passed, her little forehead just resting right over my heart. And whatever happened after that I just can't explain. So it's going to be a while, y'all. But my goodness, how blessed was I to have someone who loved me so fiercely and so purely. And what she taught me throughout my life, and especially this last year, about the woman I want to be, the woman I'm still becoming even at 48. Some of that's changed just since Friday. Grammy and I talked a lot about signs from our loved ones that have gone, whether it be a butterfly passing by or a cardinal or finding a golf ball in the most random places because my pop was a golfer. Grammy's thing is going to be bobby pins because they're all over the house and she used them and we're already finding them in random places. But she told me probably 3 weeks ago, when I die, I'm going to come see you and you're going to know I'm there. And so far, she has kept up with that promise and it's given me a lot of comfort in such a traumatic and devastating time for me. And years ago, when I lost someone very close to me, I found this little passage that is a good reminder that while her little shell that carried that big, beautiful personality is gone, it doesn't mean she's gone. And I'm going to read this because it's brought me comfort. I'm standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until, at length, she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, there, she is gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that's all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side. And she is just as able to bear her load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, there, she is gone, there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, here she comes. And that is dying. I want to thank you guys for loving Grammy. She read every message that was posted. We would sit there in the hospital when we had nothing else to do but hear the beep of a machine, and we just read through them, and it brought her so much joy. And even though she never met any of y'all, she loved you like family because you loved me. I hope I can do her proud. I know she'll be watching, and we have a couple of rough days coming up. We have her viewing, which is not going to be a viewing because she said, I don't want people looking at my dead body. But we will have our time with her, and we will be able to see her and say our goodbyes. And we have plans of what we're going to do that was very unique to her before we close that casket one last time. And then we will have graveside services because she did not want a funeral. And I'm going to speak, and I have not written what I'm going to say because how do you sum up Sarah Francis in 5 minutes? She was larger than life, but I think I'll be okay. And I may not write a thing. I may get up there and just wing it, but we have some hard days ahead, and our family is broken and devastated, and my kids are taking it very hard too. So keep us in your prayers. Thank you for loving her. Thank you for loving me. It's really meant a lot. I'm not sure when I'll be back to do some normal stuff. I have a lot to catch up on, and maybe once we get the formalities out of the way and I have a few days to kind of just start to navigate this brand new road that I'm on that's going to be very different than the one I've lived for the last year or even the last 48 years because she's been with me. And I know how lucky I am to have had her for 48 years. So many people never come close to having their grandparents in their lives that long. It is just a new chapter for this family. So thank you for being patient as I navigate this unimaginable grief that I'm feeling right now, but I will be back. But I wanted to do this because maybe getting it out into the universe instead of just in my heart and my head is one thing, but I also wanted to share my thoughts with you guys about her and also to update what had happened because the last thing I posted on YouTube was very hopeful. And I guess in a lot of ways that was good because that night I didn't treat her like she was dying. I treated her like Grammy and we had the best time, y'all. We laughed so hard. And just a thank you to all the nurses, the doctors that took good care of her. She loved all of them. She couldn't remember everybody's names, but she would say, can I call you darling? So thank you guys for listening if you made it this far. I think this may have been more of a therapy session for me than anything, but I really wanted to express my gratitude to all of you that have reached out. Those of you that have donated, we really appreciate it. We've been using that to do what we need to do to honor her life at her service. So thank you very much. And I think it's safe for me to say thank you from Grammy for the love you guys have given her over the years when you've heard the funny stories about her and in the last year, the ups and downs. I love our community. I'm not sure when I'll be back doing regular episodes. It's the worst time of the year for me not to be working, but this is more important right now to navigate this with my heart, but also my mom, who has lost her last core family member. It's just her now and my kids, and to just be present here for them. So I will see you guys when I see you. I love all y'all. Thank you so much. And to Grammy, Godspeed, woman. Stay close to me.